this video we're going to look at how to use a little bit more CSS to style your web page. Now if you remember from the last videos, we've made our index page and we've stuck in some div tags and made some boxes. That was our container, header, box 1, 2 and 3. On the right hand side you can see the result of this, which is the header, box 1, 2 and 3. And of course all of this is linked together with our CSS file, which if we recap that again, we've got the container which sits at 900 pixels, our header which is 900 pixels, which is the width of our container. We have box 1 at 300, box 2 at 600, and then finally box 3 at 900 again. So that's a web page made in there. So what I want to do right now is basically talk about a little bit more CSS and start to style the things inside the boxes and not just the boxes themselves. Now if you look back at our HTML, what we've got over here is a H1 tag, a H2 tag and a P tag, and what I want to do is change the font from what it looks like right now, which is a really boring looking font, to something that's a little bit more interesting. Now we could very well just go into each box and change the font in each box, but that's not the way to use CSS because we're just making our own life harder. What we want to do is add some tags at the bottom of our CSS file that take care of our H1, our H2 and our P tag. Right now I'm only using H1, H2 and P. Later on, if I used a H3 or a H4, I could always come back to my CSS file and just add them to the list. There's no harm, by the way, in adding H3 and H4 right now. It won't be wrong. In fact, it might be quite clever to do that, so we'll leave them in there. We open a curly bracket, which automatically closes. Now, one of the very important things to note is we've used the hash symbol on every bit of CSS before. Those are for div tags. Now these H1, H2 and the P tag are not div tags, they're not boxes. They are in fact code that websites already know. We don't need the hashtag. So what we need to do is just very simply decide what style do we want to use on our H1, our H2 and our P. In this case I'm just going to go to font family and I'm going to type in sans serif, and you'll see immediately on my preview window it immediately changed the font into a sans serif font. I could go one further and do font size, but that's the wrong place to put it because my H1 should be bigger than my H2, which should be bigger than my P. So let's do something wrong for a second. So if we do font size and make everything 22 pixels, you will see that everything on my page suddenly went the same size. This is not the place to put a font size. Now if we do want to change the header size or the H1 size, what we could do is go into a next line and go H1, open and close curly brackets and do font size. And now what we could do is say, well, I want this to be 45 pixels. And there we go. And that's the correct way to do it. So just to recap, what we're doing here is we're saying take the H1, 2, in the future H3 and 4, and the P tag and change all of them to a sans serif font. I could very well right now just change the color of everything to something that I wanted, which let's say is aqua, and you can see on my page everything has changed color. Well, I hope you're getting the idea that with CSS we can put a style to everything on the page in one go, or if we want to, we can take one tag, a H1 or a P, and change only that, for example the size. And of course at this point we could change the color as well, and we can change that into beige or whatever we want to. So the real idea is that you take the design of your web page and using CSS you put all the style of your web page into the CSS file. And just to remind you again, there should be no style, no color, no font ever in your HTML file. Your HTML file is really a bunch of lines which say make a box, put this inside the box, but nothing about the style. Equally, your CSS should have all the style in it. It should have the widths and the heights of every box, the font color, and everything else that your web page looks like should be in your CSS file.